If you're about to paint your kitchen, please, for the love of bejeebus, do not use these paint colors. I've gathered 5 paint colors that I do not like on the walls in a kitchen, and I'm going to tell you why I don't like each one. But not only that, I'm going to give you some alternative color choices for each bad choice that suits a kitchen a little bit better, in my opinion. Today's video is appropriately sponsored by Mighty Boards, which are the best tester boards that you can get. They're large, paintable boards that are flexible and lightweight, and what you can do is you can paint these boards with whatever tester paint you have to make sure that you're using the right paint in your room before you go buy 1, 2, 3 gallons of it. Mighty Boards are great because they hold on to paint really, really well, and instead of using a tiny little square inch swatch, you're given a massive sample that will not only give you the best representation of a color on a wall, but you can also move it around and see it on different walls in the room or even different rooms altogether. Super handy tool. I always recommend having a bunch on hand just in case you want to test some colors out. I'll leave their information down below if you want to pick some up. And thank you, Mighty Boards, for helping us out with today's slightly controversial video. So what makes a bad kitchen color? Well, I think when you're picking paint colors for any room, you have to be aware of when you're using it, how you're using it, what kind of mindset you want to have while using it. So you probably want to pick a color that you enjoy, that's maybe a little bit uplifting. You also don't want a color that's way too dark because then you won't be able to see properly when you're chopping up your vegetables. And 2 little disclaimers. If you love one of these colors that I say is awful, that's okay. It's not awful to you, which means it's not awful to you. And secondly, we're talking about the wall colors, not necessarily the cabinet colors or anything. I'm using Behr paint as today's example, so all these colors will be by that company. Let's get into it. So the first color that I don't like in kitchens is red. Red is very dramatic and passionate on the color theory side of things. And that sounds like it might be good in a kitchen. You can be really all over the place in the kitchen and just feeling yourself and your best life and all that. But also, you don't want your walls to look like you just freshly butchered cattle. Just all the stuff is spread on the walls. It's just a lot. It sounds like it'd be fun in theory, but you'll get very tired of it very quickly. So the example that I used is Flirt Alert, which is by Behr paint, and I had to throw it in because of that name. Looking at it right here, this is a color that is red. It has a little bit of an orange undertone to it as well, which makes it even more vibrant and energetic. It is going to be a nightmare on your walls. An alternative red choice would be something like Portuguese Dawn, which is a little more toned down, neutral, more of a red undertone, brown tan kind of coloration. It can look a little more pinky than red, but this is the sort of color that will be a little more mellow on the eyes and will maybe last more than a few months on your walls. The second color I want to talk about is yellow. And this is a color that some people love in their kitchen because it is so sunny and invigorating and zesty, but just like red, it's a lot. It is the brightest, the warmest color you can get. And if it's in anything other than small doses, it's going to be way too visually stimulating. And also it could create a weird color cast. If you have a lot of yellow walls that just are bouncing yellow light onto everything, it could create this almost sickly green kind of illumination, which is not desirable in the kitchen. And the color that I want to use as an example here is Upbeat by Behr. More of a bummer, not really upbeat to me. I just think it's too yellow. You don't need to go too yellow in this case if you want a little bit of that sunshine in. So the color that I have as an alternative is Crepe. Great name for a kitchen color. It's an edible thing. It's appetizing. It's also a little more of a yellow undertone beige. So a slightly different approach. It could be a color that may seem a little blah to a lot of people. I think it will stand out more if it's one of the only beiges you use in your color scheme throughout your home. So if your hallway is maybe an off-white or a bit of a cooler color or a light green, then crepe will stand out a little bit more with that warmth. You'll get that kind of cozy, inviting feeling, but you'll actually be able to look at your walls rather than putting on your sunglasses while dicing your tomatoes or something. The third color not to use, in my opinion, on the walls in your kitchen is black. Now, black is a very trendy color. Some may say it's not a color at all. It is kind of moody and it can be used in really interesting ways, even in a kitchen, but I could see it more so being a cabinet choice, definitely a fixture choice as well on your handles. But on the walls, It's just not practical whatsoever. What's gonna happen is your kitchen is just gonna absorb all the light coming in, and you're not gonna have an easy time seeing what you're doing, which is kind of a safety hazard at that point. Black paint colors also are kind of devoid of undertones, which is maybe good if you're going for something neutral, but doesn't really have a lot of joy to it. So the color that I would recommend instead of black is the delicious Thai basil. This is a great alternative because even though it's not very black, it is a darker color, but it has that beautiful sagey green quality. So it has this organic feeling to it. It's peaceful, it's transitional, it has that aromatic sort of herbaceous feeling to it, which is great for cooking too. And it just feels like a slightly happier color, even though it has that depth to it. I'm still very much on the green bandwagon when it comes to kitchens, both wall colors and cabinets. In fact, this would be a great cabinet color as well. Just make sure you're picking something else for the walls, maybe an off-white or a greenage. Next up, we have purple as a color I don't like to use too often in the kitchen. Some purples maybe, but these cooler, more periwinkle purples, there just doesn't really seem to be any connection to food and anything appetizing to me. And that's what really kind of irks me about it. It has this unnatural feeling to it, which could potentially work, but it just sort of feels more like a lullaby color, you know? It's a bedroom choice that will put you to sleep, which you don't want to do while you're cooking. So Wizard's Potion is the purple that we're going to go with that I'm unsure of. And the alternative is a color called Peaceful Blue. So blue is kind of a nice one for the kitchen because it does have that serene, airy quality to it. It's kind of a sky blue, which I really like. So if you're cooking during the day and maybe you have your windows open and then you'll have your walls too, and it might look like a little continuation of this actual sky and then the sky represented on your drywall. Kind of fun. It's also a lighter color too, so it's going to reflect more light back in. I just think it has this sort of open, buoyant quality to it that I think would work really nicely in a kitchen. And another color I do not like in kitchens is a bright, stark, sterile, lifeless white. Kind of like Ultra Pure White by Behr. What a name, eh? Like the best ultra mega ultimate white. Don't look at anything else. This is too bright for me. It's too stark. It's too lifeless. And some may call it timeless. I just think it's inappropriate. I think they've gone too far here. It's just so fluorescent, so bright. It's like you have LED walls always on all the time. It has a 94 LRV. That means it reflects 94% of the light that hits it. That's insane. What I will say though, is I don't mind an off-white, which is why I recommend Nano White as a great alternative. It's still very bright and clean, but not stark and empty as a color. It has a softness to it. It's a little bit warm and cozy. And even though it's still a bit brighter than what I would normally go on walls, you could do it. And you'll have a much better time doing it than if you went with mega insane fluorescent white that we just talked about. I do like to talk about white kitchens, specifically cabinets, which I do in this video here. Don't feel pressure to be like your neighbor who just got beautiful white cabinets done. Here are some other options that maybe might tickle your fancy.